Most people will never reach their first million. Not because it's impossible, but because they're not willing to do what's necessary. They want the result without the process, they want freedom without discipline, they want wealth without sacrifice. Today, I'm going to show you something I've never taught before. The exact mathematics, the real numbers, and the difficult decisions that most people don't have the courage to make. This isn't about quick tricks or shortcuts. This is the raw, unfiltered truth about building your first million in 10 years. If you're expecting me to tell you it's easy, you can stop watching now. Because it's not easy. But it is possible. And I'm going to show you exactly how. But first, let me give you a warning. 1 million today is not the same as 1 million from decades ago. Inflation has already eroded much of the power that number once had. But even so, this number remains an important psychological milestone. It's a moment when you suddenly have many more options in life. It's when you transition from surviving to actually living. It's when you stop being forced to do things you don't want to do. And that freedom, that liberation from financial pressure, is worth more than any specific dollar amount. Let me be direct with you. The reason most people never get there isn't complicated. They're simply not willing to make the trade-offs. They want to spend like they're rich before they actually are. They want the luxury car, the expensive apartment, the designer clothes, the exotic vacations. They want to look wealthy instead of actually becoming wealthy. And that choice, that single choice to prioritize appearance over reality, costs them everything. It costs them their future. It costs them their freedom. It costs them that million they claim they want so badly. Now comes the practical part. The real mathematics. The first thing you need to do is define a clear goal. Not a vague dream, but a specific target with a deadline. I want 1 million in 10 years. This forces you to calculate how much you need to save per month. It forces you to make difficult decisions. It forces you to confront reality. A dream has no deadline. A goal does. And a goal forces you to act. Without that deadline, without that specific number, you're just hoping. And hope is not a strategy. Hope doesn't compound. Hope doesn't build wealth. Let me show you the numbers. Let's assume you want to reach your first million in 10 years, and let's assume your investments will return 10% annually. That's optimistic, but it's the historical average of the stock market over the long term. Pay attention to these numbers because they're going to shock you. If you're starting from zero, with nothing saved, you'll need to invest approximately $6,500 per month. That's almost $80,000 per year. It's a lot of money. Most people can't do it unless they earn very well and live spending very little. The mathematics is brutal and unforgiving. But here's where it gets interesting. If you already have 100,000 saved, the number drops to about 5,000 per month. It's still heavy, but it's more achievable. If you already have 250,000, things become much easier because that money you already have will work for you without you having to do anything. It grows by itself while you sleep. Let me show you the magic of compound interest. Take that 250,000, let it earn 10% per year for 10 years. At the end, it becomes 650,000. You did nothing. The money grew on its own. Now look how interesting this becomes. If you need 1 million total and you're already going to have 650,000 just from money that grew by itself, how much is missing? Only 350,000. And to accumulate 350,000 in 10 years, you only need to save 3,000 per month. Do you see what just happened? The earlier you start, the more time does the heavy lifting for you. And the less you need to struggle later. Each year you postpone is a year that never comes back. And that lost year costs you tremendous amounts of money down the line. Time is not neutral in wealth building. Time is either your greatest ally or your most expensive enemy. And you choose which one it becomes by the actions you take today, right now, this very moment. But there's a problem with these calculations. They assume you're going to earn 10% every single year. And life doesn't work that way. Some years the market goes up 30%, Other years it drops 20%. It's not a straight line going up. It's volatile, unpredictable, sometimes terrifying. So what do? 3 things. First, plan with more conservative numbers. Instead of counting on 10% per year, count on 7 or 8%. This gives you a margin of safety, a buffer against reality. Second, save more money than you think you need. If you calculated that you need 1 million, try to reach 1,200,000. That extra amount is your cushion, your protection against the unexpected. Third, be flexible. If the market crashes when you're close to your goal, adjust the timeline. Work 1 or 2 more years. There's nothing wrong with that. Having a plan is important, but being too rigid with the plan is stupidity. Life changes, the market changes, circumstances shift. You need to know how to adapt without losing sight of the destination. Now pay attention to this, because this is the most powerful part that most people ignore. There are 2 ways to reach your first million faster. Option 1, earn more money and save more. Option 2, spend less and manage to save more from your current salary. Most people focus only on the first option, but the second is much more powerful. Let me show you why. When you cut your expenses by 20%, you manage to save 20% more every month. It's pure mathematics. And that extra money invested every month dramatically accelerates your arrival at the first million. It compounds faster, grows larger, multiplies more aggressively. Here's a practical example. If you earn 80,000 per year and spend everything, you save 0. But if you cut expenses and live on 50,000, you have 30,000 left per year to invest. That's 2,500 per month. In 10 years at 10% return, you have almost 500,000 just from cutting expenses. That's why I say the fastest way to accumulate money is to spend less. It's not the most popular advice, it's not what people want to hear, but it's the most effective. It's the truth that sets you free, even if it's uncomfortable. Let me give you an extreme example. A 35-year-old guy earning 80,000 per year. He wants to reach his first million by 45. 10 years. What does he do? He cuts expenses to the bone. He lives on 30,000 per year. It's not easy, but it's possible if you have motivation, if you have a burning desire for freedom. This means he saves 50,000 per year. A savings rate of 62%. It's high, it's radical, it's aggressive. But it's possible. Saving 50,000 per year at 10% return, in 10 years he has about 800,000. Almost there. If he adjusts a little more, he easily reaches the million. Would I recommend this? Maybe, if the person is truly committed, if they understand the risks, if they're willing to make that sacrifice. But it's aggressive, very aggressive. It assumes high returns, low expenses, doesn't have much room for error. But the lesson is crystal clear. The more you save, the faster you get there. And the less you spend, the more you can save. It's a simple equation that most people refuse to solve because the solution requires sacrifice. Now, before we talk about where to invest, I need to tell you something that nobody wants to hear. If you have debts, you're not ready to invest. You're bleeding money. It's compound interest working against you. Debt is not a tool. Debt is a parasite. It compounds against you with perfect discipline. While you sleep, it grows. While you work, it corrodes. And worst of all, it changes the way you think. I've seen this my entire life. Brilliant people, educated, successful, ruining their own lives with debts they thought they could control. They call it leverage. I call it legalized self-deception. The mathematics of debt is brutal and unforgiving. If you owe 100,000 at 15% interest, that's a guaranteed loss of 15,000 per year. You can't diversify that. It's a guaranteed negative return. Now tell me, where are you going to find a guaranteed positive return of 15% in the market without taking enormous risk? You won't. You can't. It doesn't exist. And here's the worst part. Debt doesn't just tax your wallet, it taxes your mind. You don't think clearly when you owe money. No matter how intelligent you are, debt reprograms your brain. Every decision becomes defensive. You stop thinking about opportunity and start thinking about survival. You stop playing offense and get stuck playing defense forever. When you're in debt, you live in a race between compound interest and compound wisdom. Most people lose because they underestimate how fast stupidity compounds. The investor without debt can wait for the right opportunity. The indebted investor has to beg for one. And the market doesn't reward those who beg. It rewards those who can afford to be patient. So before any investment, before you put a single dollar into the stock market, pay off your debts. Credit cards, overdrafts, installment plans, expensive financing. Be ruthless. Treat this like your house is on fire. You don't stand around analyzing the architecture. You run. You escape. You survive first, optimize later. And don't come to me with stories about good debt. There's no such thing. Both types are dangerous. One kills you slowly, the other quickly. But both rob you of sleep. And you don't build rational wealth while carrying irrational weight on your back. People with debt need things to go right. They have no margin of safety. When something bad happens, a crisis, a job loss, a medical emergency, they break. They collapse. They lose everything. Assuming you don't have debts or you've already gotten rid of them, now we can talk about where to invest that money. Because it's not enough to save. You need to put it to work. And where you put it determines whether you'll reach your goal or not. I've always been an investor in stocks, in companies, because in the long run, stocks beat everything. Bonds, cash, real estate, gold, everything. The market has returned about 10% per year over the last 100 years. Some decades more, others less. But on average, 10%. And if you're accumulating money for 10 years, trying to build wealth fast, you need that return. You can't get that real return with government bonds, even if they're paying 10 or 15% nominally. Because countries that pay those high rates have sky-high inflation that erodes the value of the currency. In other words, the 10 or 15% from government bonds becomes 5 or 6% after inflation. You're not actually getting ahead. You're barely keeping pace. So you need stocks. You need exposure to businesses, to companies that grow, that innovate, that compound their earnings over time. Now, which stock should you buy? Here's where it gets interesting. If you want to understand how I think, look at the portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway. We have enormous positions in companies like Apple, Coca-Cola, Visa, Bank of America. These aren't sexy companies. They're not the trendy startups getting all the media attention. They're boring businesses that have been making money for decades. Why? Because I look for companies that will still be here 30 years from now. Companies with real competitive advantages, strong brands, businesses I can understand. By the way, let me tell you something. Everyone is crazy about artificial intelligence right now. I don't like it. Not because the technology is bad, but because I can't predict who's going to win that race. It's too much speculation for me. I prefer to buy Coca-Cola because I know that 20 years from now people will still be drinking Coca-Cola. But who will dominate artificial intelligence in 2040? I have no idea. And I don't invest in things I don't understand. That's a fundamental rule I've never broken. And here's what you really need to do. Study. There's no other way. You need to understand the sectors of the economy. You need to understand how companies work. You need to read annual reports, understand how they make money, study the competition, analyze profit margins, see who's in command. Start by choosing a sector you know or are interested in. Work in technology. Study technology companies. Understand retail? Study retailers. Like banks? Study banks. Don't keep jumping from sector to sector without understanding anything. That's not investing, that's gambling. Take 3 or 4 companies from that sector. Read everything about them. Compare the numbers. See which has the best margin, which has less debt, which has the best track record of growth, which has the most sustainable competitive advantage. Then choose the best one and buy it. The next month, repeat the process. Maybe in the same sector, maybe in another. But always studying before buying. Never buy a stock just because someone said it's good. Never buy because it's trendy. Never buy because your cousin's friend made money on it. Buy because you understood the business and believe in it. Buy because you've done the work. Here's my suggestion. Open an investment account and every month invest in something you've studied and understood. Every single month for 10 years. Market up or down, it doesn't matter. Just keep investing. And listen carefully, there are no shortcuts. I spent decades studying companies and I still do it today, every day. If you're not willing to do the work, then don't even start. Because investing without studying is gambling. And in gambling, over the long term, you always lose. The house always wins. The market always humbles the arrogant. Most people want results without effort. They want to buy what the influencer talked about. They want to follow the Instagram tip. They want the magic formula. It doesn't exist. What exists is study, patience, and discipline. Will you make mistakes? Yes. I've made mistakes many times. I bought companies that went bankrupt. I lost money. I've been wrong more times than I can count. But each mistake taught me something. And over time, you make fewer mistakes. You learn to identify the red flags. You learn to separate propaganda from reality. You develop judgment, intuition, wisdom. And that's worth more than any single winning investment. Now let's talk about market crashes, because everyone fears this. What if the market crashes halfway through? What if I'm at 50% of my goal and the market drops 40%? This is a valid concern because markets crash regularly. Every 7 to 10 years there's a crash, a bear market, a recession. It happened in 2000, in 2008, in 2020. And it will happen again, probably in the next 10 years. So if you're on this 10-year plan to $1 million, you will almost certainly go through a crash. The question is what to do about it. There are two ways to think about a crash. Most people see it as a disaster. They panic. They sell everything. But that's exactly wrong. It's the worst thing you can do. A crash, when you're still in the accumulation phase, when you're still saving and investing, is an opportunity. It's a gift. Because when the market drops 40%, everything becomes cheap. Stocks that were expensive become bargains. And you're still investing every month. You're still buying. So you're buying cheap. You're accumulating more shares for the same money. And when the market recovers, and it always recovers, those shares you bought cheap are worth much more. They multiply in value. So don't fear crashes. Embrace them while you're accumulating money, while you're working, while you're saving. A crash is your friend. It's an opportunity to buy cheap. Invest regardless of what's happening in the world. Ignore the news. Ignore the panic. Ignore the fear. Just keep buying, keep investing, keep moving forward. And at the beginning of your journey, engrave this in your mind. The contribution matters more than the return. If you have $10,000 invested and get 20% return, that's $2,000. Good, but it doesn't change your life. Now, if you manage to contribute another $50,000 during the year, that matters much more than the $2,000 from returns. Let me explain this better. In the first years, the money you put in every month weighs much more than the percentage that money earns. Why? Because your wealth is still small. So even if you get a high return, the absolute value remains low. But if you increase how much you save and invest, the impact is immediate and large. That's why in the beginning you need to focus on 3 things. Earn more, spend less, invest more. Returns become more important later, when the wealth is already large. Then 10 or 20% return on $1 million makes a real difference. It changes your life. But in the beginning, behavior matters more than returns. Discipline matters more than intelligence. Consistency matters more than genius. Now, if you're already saving more and already investing, it's time to generate more income. It could be extra work on weekends. It could be freelancing in your area. It could be selling something you know how to make. It could be consulting. It could be a small business you run in your spare time. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you do it. Think about it like this. If you earn $80,000 per year at your job, even saving half, that's $40,000 per year. It will take time. But if you create a small business that generates $10,000 per month in net profit, that's $120,000 per year extra. It completely changes the mathematics of the first million. It accelerates everything. And it doesn't need to be anything elaborate or complicated. I know people who reached $1 million selling cakes. Others selling consulting. Others buying and reselling things. Others teaching what they know how to do. The point isn't the type of business. The point is that you transform time into scalable income. In a job, you trade 1 hour for a fixed value. In business, you can multiply the return on your time. You can leverage yourself. So if you're taking this journey to the first million seriously, stop thinking only about investments. Think about how to increase your capacity to generate income. Because in the beginning, as I've said 1,000 times, contribution is king. And the best way to increase contribution is to decrease expenses first, to save more, and then increase income. The average citizen, besides not increasing income, saves almost nothing. But you're not average. And if you want above average results, you'll need above average behavior. It's that simple. There's no way around it. Here's what I would tell a young person wanting to reach their first million. Start now. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Today. Start saving today. Start investing today. Even if you can't save enough to get there in 10 years. Even if the math doesn't work yet. Because every dollar you save now compounds, grows, gives you more options later. And the habit of living below your means, of investing regularly, of seeking new income, that's more valuable than any investment return. Because if you build that habit, if it becomes automatic, if it becomes part of who you are, you'll reach the first million eventually. Maybe not in 10 years. Maybe in 15 or 20. But you'll get there. And when you arrive, you'll understand something important. The first million isn't about the number itself. It's about what that number represents. Options, freedom, security. The ability to not be forced to do things you don't want to do. The power to say no. The luxury of patience. Maybe you'll use your million to start a business. Maybe to live off the income. Maybe to change careers. Maybe to take a sabbatical year. Maybe to invest more, which is what I would do. The point is you have choices. You're not trapped by immediate need for money. And that changes everything. It changes how you negotiate. How you work. How you live. How you sleep at night. I'm 99 years old now and I've been financially independent since my early 30s, probably before that actually. Not because I made a fortune overnight. Not because I hit one big bet. But because I lived below my means. I invested consistently. And I had patience. And patience, let me tell you, is the hardest part. Because the results don't come fast. In the first years, it seems like nothing is happening. You save, you invest, and the balance barely moves. It's frustrating. It's discouraging. Many people quit here. They give up right before the magic happens. But if you continue, if you don't stop, the magic happens. Compound interest is like magic, but it's slow magic. In the first years you barely see it. But after a decade, 2 decades, the numbers become absurd. They become unbelievable. Those who quit early never see the magic happen. Only those who have the patience to stay see the complete show. They see the transformation. They see the miracle of mathematics. And I promise you one thing. If you do the work, if you save consistently, invest wisely, live below your means, and give it enough time, you'll get there. Maybe not in 10 years. Maybe it takes a little longer. But you'll arrive. And when you do, you'll understand that the journey was worth it. Not just for the money, but for the person you became in the process. Because building wealth isn't just about money. It's about developing discipline, patience, the ability to delay gratification, the skill to think long-term. And those qualities serve you in everything in life, not just finances. You'll become someone who knows how to say no. Someone who thinks long-term. Someone who doesn't panic when things get difficult. Someone who can withstand pressure. Someone who can wait when others can't. And those characteristics are worth more than the million itself. They're worth more than any amount of money. Because money can be lost, but character, once built, stays with you forever. Wealth is not built in days. It's built in decades. And you will get there. You just need two things. Start and don't stop. Most people fail because they stop. Not because they don't know what to do. But because they give up halfway. They quit when it gets hard. They abandon the plan when it gets uncomfortable. Don't be like most people. You will get there. I guarantee it. You just need to start and never stop. The mathematics works. The process works. You just need to trust it and execute it with relentless consistency. Start today. Keep going tomorrow. And never, ever stop until you reach that million. Your future self will thank you for the sacrifice. Your freedom awaits on the other side of discipline.